Well, I do want to begin by expressing my gratitude to all of those involved with planning this event. And because it is an important activity, and I want especially to congratulate Switzerland on your dedication to improving the global science and engineering enterprise. For there are important linkages between Switzerland and the US, as we both seek to be very much focused on how can we make advances, especially through science and engineering. There are numbers of examples. I'll do nothing more than note that our researchers are collaborating on multiple projects. These include a number of projects being undertaken at CERN. And then earlier this year, the National Science Foundation signed a letter of intent with the Swiss Secretary for Education, Research, and Innovation so that our graduate research fellows can gain international experience through your labs, through our Graduate Research Opportunities Worldwide, or GROW program. So thank you for what you're doing. Now, NSF has a long history of supporting women in the STEM areas, and we would hope in the cause of innovation. We can cite our experiences going back some 37 years, and we are still engaged in the effort to attract more women to science, to reduce the equity gap. But we have a lot to learn. And there are three messages I'm especially interested in sharing tonight. And one of them is that we can probably learn lessons from areas where there has been greater gender equity than might obtain for some other areas. So I'm going to start with some comments on this particular slide. But in addition to trying to extract lessons from where there has been greater gender equity, it is also relevant to ask what can we learn from the experiences of women in science, and especially women who've been innovative scientists. And we've already heard from some tonight, and there's even more to be gained. The posters around outside are especially useful for drawing our attention to the fact that there have been successes. And then third, the question is, aren't there some lessons we can learn from nations that have been far more successful in reducing the gender gap than obtains for some other cases? So when I say we might try to look at what we see, here are figures from the US experiences on women in science and engineering occupations. And I know you say 2010, isn't that a long time ago? It takes a while to compile all of the national data. But why I've reported this here is what you can see so obviously are the differences. But I want to draw attention to the biological and the related life sciences and to the social sciences. Because what we see there are significant rates of participation by women. In fact, in biology, in the past 17 years, women's participation has increased by 15%, and now about 58% of all bachelor's, master's, and doctorates in biology are awarded to women. This wasn't always the case in neither the biological nor in the social sciences. Hence, it becomes very important to ask what kinds of conditions have been important for these changes, because those conditions might well have implications for what we don't see, and that is that level of participation in many of the other fields. So rather than simply taking the biological and social sciences as the odd fields, or fields that often people dismiss as their discussions about gender equity, why not pay much more attention to the experiences and the likelihood that they would illuminate things that have to do with issues already mentioned, mentorship. They would have to do with the role models that might be there. I would suggest then we have a lot that we can learn from what I would call these successful experiences. But successful experiences might be obvious not just in the numbers of participation, but in what we find with the particular experiences of given women. And I've just chosen to select two to talk about. We can look at the routes that women have taken. For example, here is Sally Chisholm, who was a National Medal of Science winner in 2012. She's a biological oceanographer, and I think that's very interesting because of the kind of crossing of very different disciplines. As a biological oceanographer, she's looking at a particular marine microorganism, and she wants to understand from the genome level to the global scale everything possible about this organism. Because her view is the more we can learn about this tiny creature, the more successful we can break down barriers between disciplines. What I would suggest is, in this case, is what this is demonstrating is this fundamental curiosity about things that are possible to observe. And as I will come back later, I don't think she started this route saying, I want to be the world's greatest innovator. No, it was building from the curiosity, and it's that level of curiosity that is so fundamental to so much of what we undertake. And I would propose, I know this might sound terribly radical, there are women who are just as curious as men. But and how do we capture that particular experience? Another, Dr. Sridevi Sarma. Now, sometimes curiosity drives pursuits. Other times, it's particular experiences. In this case, Dr. Sarma, in the Institute for Computational Medicine at Johns Hopkins, was trained as an electrical engineer. But she switched fields after watching a relative battle Parkinson's disease. And so her research is developing models of how activity at the level of neurons influences Parkinson's disease. She's looking at those kinds of behaviors, such as the tremor frequency, the movement velocity, reaction time. But the point here is that what she's doing is drawing on her personal and professional goals to bring together important kinds of experiences. Again, there are multiple routes that people can pursue to the route to innovation, and that's what I'm suggesting. We can have more lessons to learn from what those experiences are as we're looking for increasing women's participation in the world of innovation. There is also the international arena and some of the differences that we find across nations. Here is a select group of countries where women earn the majority of science degrees. Now, it's quite interesting what one sees in particular patterns. So, for example, even though the numbers are not given here, in the case of Malaysia, 57% of the science degree recipients are women, and this matches what one sees in the share of all college and university graduates. So Malaysia excels in recruiting women into computer science, and there are again things that would become relevant to ask, what's going on here? Now, these kinds of experiences do warrant, I would suggest, attention from the so-called developed countries. And of course, there's a mixture of countries in here, but what can we learn by looking across boundaries? That's one of the reasons why I was interested in participating this evening, because of the question, what can the US learn from Switzerland? How can we exchange experiences if we're all concerned with gender equity and the matter of where things need to be moving? And so I will wrap up some of my comments by suggesting that why I like the theme of this particular conference is it seems to offer possibilities for attracting girls, women into the sciences. All too often, the argument has been made that the reason why we need greater diversity on gender, racial, ethnic bases, a number of disabilities, the argument is often given that this is very essential for the competitiveness of a nation. I've said on other occasions, it's very hard for me to think of a 10-year-old saying, I want to be a scientist because I want my nation to be competitive. That's hardly, it's not even, I don't think, usually people sit around and say, innovation. That's what I'm seeking. But the advantage of the innovation theme is it says the innovation can grow out of the fundamental curiosity that people can have. It can grow out of the experiences of practical problems that can be resolved. And so innovation becomes then the possible outcome of the pursuits that people might naturally be inclined to look at. And so I end my comments with a quote from the astronaut Sunita Williams, who talked about what it was like to be a helicopter pilot and an astronaut. And she says, you know, the helicopter doesn't know if you're a man or a woman. The space station doesn't know if you're a man or a woman. The space suits don't sit, no, so that's a woman that's just put me on. No, she's saying that's not the way it happens. The world of curiosity, it's the same thing. The curiosity, the interest in discovery is not something that is limited to only one gender. And so as we look for the successes and the possibility of building on even more successes, I would suggest we can look at the conditions, share those experiences, and we're well on our way to having the greater gender equity that will lead to even higher levels of success in innovation. Thank you.